I think we can start,
Perfect.
for respect of the person who's already here. So hello everyone, and welcome to today's Data to Action webinar about the regional workforce strategy. So this session is the sixth webinar in our business intelligence webinar series hosted by the Economic Development Department at the Sud-Est Regional Commission. So I'm joined today by Jenna Evans from Stellero Consulting. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So Jenna is the Chief Operating Officer at Stellero Consulting and Research Firm. She holds an MBA from the University of New Brunswick and has extensive experience in workforce strategy and organizational consulting. She played a key role developing this strategy or this regional workforce strategy. So this session is more about connecting the dots between data, strategy, and action. So we want to share not only we want to share not only Mario, please, if you can mute your micro. Or I can do that, I guess. So the section today is about connecting the dots between data. I would just. I'm not sure if you can hear me. So I need to mute the. Patrick, can you mute the participants?
أوصل سوا نشوف هذا
Mute.
You're muted now, Rabab.
Sorry. I think we can continue now. So today's session is more about connecting the dots, I was saying, between the data, strategy, and action. So we want to share not only what the strategy recommends, but also why it's important and how it can be used in practical ways across the Sud-Est New Brunswick. So for those first who are not familiar with the Sud-Est Labor Markets Partnership, it brings together employer, educator, municipality, and community organization, and also as the Sud-Est Regional Commission around a shared goal, which is building a strong, inclusive, and future-ready workforce for our region. As you know, our region is one of the fast-growing region in Canada. So this creates opportunity for sure, but it's also a pressure on, for instance, labor shortage, skills mismatch, sometimes housing also, to transportation and service capacity. This is why the strategy responds to those realities by focusing more on three key priorities. So preparing first the workforce for the future, strengthening those critical sector, and at the same time attracting and retaining the talents on the region. So in this webinar, we will talk through all the strategy, direction, and the work that was done. And we will highlight how the strategy can support the employer, the educator, the partner, and across all the region. So to begin with, I will start with the strategic direction behind the work. Jenna, one of the most visible features on this strategy is that it narrows the focus to some smaller number of priorities or priority sector. So what was the thinking behind this concentrating also all the efforts rather than just trying to cover everything?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that
Thank you.
question. And I think it comes down to we work with communities all across North America on workforce, on economic development, on various different pieces, and we can't be everything to everyone. So, what we really wanted to come in and do is support finding focus within the SLMP. And this wasn't to say that we were ignoring specific industries, but we wanted to dive in to see what sectors do we have strengths in, what sectors do we have gaps in, and where do we really need to prioritize some of our efforts. These were done through input from employers. It was done with municipalities, with educators and community partners. And we based this on things like employment size, growth, specialization, data. And specifically, we looked at, with all of the municipalities within, we looked at a lot of data from Albert and Westmoreland counties as an example. And it was really a balance between the urban growth industries and the rural economic strengths, because this was something that we very much so wanted to come through. And for those of you on this webinar and those listening, the sectors that were identified for context were one, the visitor economy and lifestyle. So this would not be a surprise to the region. And then we have advanced manufacturing and construction, another industry that we heard time and time again, and also the data put us in that direction. And then we have business services. Those were the three key sectors. And then as enabling sectors, because they are absolutely very important, but the reason we deemed them as enabling is because they really do impact all sectors, and they're more out of our control. They're more external. So the enabling sectors we went with was healthcare, government, and education. So, of course, very, very pertinent to the regional economy, very pertinent to the workforce. But we understand from the partners in the ecosystem and the partnership itself, there's less control we have with some of those sectors. And the more that we can really do and adjust is back to those three, with the visitor economy and lifestyle, the advanced manufacturing and construction, and business services.
Okay, thank you so much, Jana. So this really helped frame the overall focus of this strategy. Another thing we've came across, or we can put together, is that this strategy put a strong focus on skills rather than just jobs. So why was a skill-based lens so important for this for our region, or for the Sud-Est regional in like right now, if you can say?
Absolutely.
Why this focus only on skills rather than jobs?
Absolutely. So we wanted to look at this innovatively. So of course, we looked at it with sectors, but the region, especially those around the table with the partners in the community and everyone around the table, wanted to think outside the box. And how can we look at this broader than just at a job level, or broader than at a sector level, like a lot of other workforce strategies do? So one thing that, of course, we've seen in trends that's transpired even before COVID, there's been a shift of technology, and which is making a shift in skills. So skills cut across all sectors. So this is the purpose. So especially if you're listening right now, and I may not have mentioned a sector that you are in, that does not mean that this strategy is not for you. An example of how we are really taking that lens and making sure that everyone can see themselves in this strategy is taking the emphasis on skills. So for example, this is going to allow for transferable skills to support long-term employability. And of course, as we continue to evolve, as we all know, AI, that's a recent new piece, especially in the workplace and in the education system. And this is something that, again, comes back to a skill that goes across all sectors. This is impacting government. This is impacting healthcare. This is impacting IT. It's really being embedded, but it's one specific skill. So instead of course, going individually into each of the sectors, there's an opportunity to have a broad-based, skill-based approach, which is going to support the region to really focus on the in-demand skills. So when we went around, we really wanted to hear from employers, from people seeking work, what were they struggling with? What were the gaps they were experiencing when finding work or employed in the region? The retention, the attraction piece. And it all came back into a lot of discussion around employers are increasingly looking for adaptable capabilities and things that are more skill specific than job specific, because things on the job can be trained more than skills that may need a lot more details that you need before. For example, problem solving. We heard a lot of employers say, I would rather have someone that knows how to problem solve and is bilingual, as an example, than someone who knows the day-to-day work of the job, because those are the skills that I need and I can teach the stuff on the job. So that's very much something we noted. We broke it down for context, and we will be having the full strategy launch on the website over the next coming weeks. So you'll all see the more fulsome version. But as at a high level, we identified 3 core skill areas. So we identified human-centered skills, which is more specific to your problem solving, your communication, your creativity, your teamwork, and adaptability. We talked about digital and technological literacy. This is your digital schools. This is digital tools, your data literacy, your systems thinking, your emerging technologies, the things like I just mentioned, such as AI. And then thirdly, which we heard time and time again, which is very, very much so to your region, especially with the Anglophone and Francophone nature, and the bilingualism, which is the language and intercultural fluency. So this was another skill that we heard, because no matter what sector we were speaking with, language was definitely a barrier, and there was a demand for more training to support individuals that want to be able to apply for a job that they may not be qualified for due to the language and intercultural fluency skills. So I know I won't be able to get into too much more with that, but I wanted to give a high level overview in terms of why it is so important and how those skills really cross and across every single sector that we have within the region.
Okay. Thank you, Jenna. So we've talked about what the strategy focuses on now and how it's framed the problem. The strategy also talks a lot about alignment and avoiding duplications. So in practical term, what does better alignment actually look like for a partner on the ground?
Absolutely. So I really appreciate this question, and I definitely think that a big piece of this, and I think this will get into one of our other questions, is when this was originally started, it was a Greater Moncton initiative. So we wanted to come in, and since this is again the Southeast Regional Workforce Strategy, we wanted the region to be the key focus. And along with this, as a region, we needed better alignment, not only within, because we had really strong alignment and lots of things happening, especially from all the previous work that had been done in the Greater Moncton area, but especially broadening this area, our focus was making sure we communicated. We've reached out to every single municipality within the region to offer to be able to do a session, meet with their community, work with the boots on the ground, understand their specific needs, because of course the region, we have to be better together and support each other, but each community, rural and urban, are going to have slightly different strengths and weaknesses. So we wanted to better understand that. So that was something that we thought from the get-go. We wanted to make sure that there was better alignment from a regional perspective beyond the gates of the Greater Moncton. And then also we continued to have more clear definition around the role and what everyone's role is within. This is something that we're actually currently working on still behind the scenes with the council, as well as restructuring some of the working groups to be able to implement this strategy. And what we're working on is having clearly defined roles and responsibilities within each of the working groups, as well as different reporting cycles, different roadmaps and action plans. How can we measure and then really track these pieces and understand a lot of the people around the room are tasked to do similar activities. We all have our individual mandates, but then we all are, of course, supporting workforce, economic development, and beyond. So with that, coming around the table and avoiding duplication, how can we partner with, for example, Immigration MB, who's already doing an initiative, and build on that rather than recreating our own initiative? They are one of our partners. So that is an initiative that can fall within the workforce strategy. Job fairs that are already happening by the amazing chambers and the amazing different organizations and support organizations. Instead of booking a job fair that same day, let's build on that. How do we get the word out for them? How do we support each other? And how do we attend and get the word out to the different contexts we have? So I think it's more than just sitting at a table together, but it's really putting in the work together and measuring it and making sure we're having that impact and it's working.
Okay, that brings us nicely to the role of the partnership itself. So what role do you see the SLMP or the Sud-Est labor market partnership playing differently going forward to comparing to how it's operated in the past?
Absolutely. Well, the region has absolutely been doing great things in terms of workforce and always prioritizing. So there has been lots of work done since the initial creation of the labor market partnership. In terms of what really changed in this is, of course, as those of you may be aware, regionalization occurred in the province, and with the adjustments of geographic boundaries and the Regional Service Commission mandates, of course, this has been adjusted since the original came out. So this one was very much so focused with the region in mind. So it's more regional focus. So as I mentioned, the initial strategy was for the Greater Moncton in mind, and this strategy focused on regional workforce development growth. So of course, the Greater Moncton as absolutely a key aspect of that, but it went beyond the bounds of Greater Moncton and made sure that we had the entire Southeast Regional Service Commission and making sure that we understood the specific needs and gaps within each of the communities that differed from the past strategy. I also would flag that a big difference in terms of how it operated in the past is things have changed since the initial strategy came out. We think of even the world of remote work. That was not as common as before when the initial strategy. So it's all about, of course, continuing to come with the trends and best practices, measuring and seeing what's working, so then we can adjust and make sure that we're making progress and we're actually seeing the results that we want to see. Again, as I mentioned before, there's been lots of things. That were done great before this new strategies come to light. However, we've been able to provide updated recommendations based on the wins and maybe misses from the past. And then, of course, with the new trends and everything that's happening, and even the business environment, the business and the demographic shifts that have changed over the last 5 to 7 years. And these were all incorporated. Another piece is the success is going to be measured by outcomes and progress on shared goals and not just activities alone. So this was something that we definitely want to bring further to the region, is showing the accountability on some of these metrics and showing the progress. Because we did hear from some of the community when we met with them that they had heard about the strategy, but they didn't know the progress that was happening. So we want to do a better job at how can we get the word out of the wins. Of course, there's going to be things that aren't as successful as other initiatives, but how can we get the really great wins or the really great programs or services or initiatives that we're doing out to the public, so the public can leverage those services and help them either get a job or for example, as an employer, help them find employees and better their workforce.
Thank you, Jenna. So if we zoom out for a moment and think in a big takeaway, so for stakeholders, what will you, if they had to remember one thing about this strategy, so what should it be and why, in your opinion?
Absolutely. So I know I've been talking a lot about the region. I think that the strategy is about coming together as one region. I understand that Southeast New Brunswick is growing quickly. You have workforce challenges. There's growing pains. There's different municipal boundaries that we're dealing with as a region. There's lots happening, and each community is dealing with slightly different things. But every community has strengths and every community has gaps, and we're going to be stronger together. So we're going to be able to accomplish more together, working together as communities instead of against each other. And this is something we work with a lot of regional service commissions across the province, and we work with a lot of regional convening bodies across North America. And this is something we all come together and do. For example, a win for Dieppe is also a win for Alma. A win for Alma is also a win for Riverview. So it all comes together, and we all need to support each other across that line. And there are so many great initiatives happening. There's so many amazing partners around the table. There's already so many things happening. So how can we lift each other up, build on the strengths instead of duplicating efforts and recreating and reinventing the wheel each time? Because we have the piece, there's always limited resources, there's always limited time, there's limited funding, there's limited pieces. So how can we leverage all of what we have together as one and really push this to have impact? The last strategy is very much, I know that the Southeast Regional Service Commission has been really, really leading the charge and supporting as a secretariat. And we really want to see it continue to grow as we fill the gaps of the council in terms of what gaps we have. We want to represent the region of what the region is compromised of. So with this, I think that it's really important. It's really important moving forward that we think regionally, we support each other regionally, and then that's going to have an impact on the region, but then also our individual communities that we're also working towards.
Thank you, Jenna. So now that we've covered the strategic direction of this strategy, so we will shift, or I would like to shift gears and look more closely to the analytical and methodological foundation behind this work. So why was it methodologically important to treat workforce preparation, talent attraction, retention as an integrated system in your work rather than as a separate policy areas?
No, absolutely. I appreciate that question. And I think it feeds into a lot of what we were just mentioning in terms of that really, if we're just creating additional silos, we already know we have silos. We have silos in government. We have silos in PSCs. We have silos in industry. And industry works at a very different pace than universities work at, than government works at. So we're already dealing with these barriers that exist and silos that exist. So we really didn't want to add any additional silos. We really didn't want to add to this piece. And it's really difficult to think about preparing your workforce if you're not also thinking about retaining and attracting. You really can't do the other without the other. They really all interconnect. So this was something that we really wanted to ensure, especially as an employee or as an individual, apologies, you're working through a pipeline. So whether it be going through a college program, whether it be a micro-credential, whether it be upskilling with your current employer, you're going through a pipeline. And I think that this is very important to have an integrated approach that strengthens the adaptability and long-term resilience rather than just separating everything in silo and creating additional silos. And then we're going to miss out on opportunities. Because, for example, if we're preparing the workforce, why not, when we're preparing them, think about how we can retain them? As an example, the place I trained, I was trained at UMB Fredericton, and I stayed here because then I was attracted and retained now. So that's an example of how, for example, if they would have saw it as if they would have looked at each different process, I may not have been able to still be here, for example, because it all is so integrated.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. We're glad to have you still here with us on this region. So the idea of integration also has implication on how the strategy is implemented. So from a methodological standpoint as well, why was a shared responsibility model favored over a centralized implementation? And how does this approach support feasibility and long-term regional outcomes?
Absolutely. And I think what we tried to do here is have a blend. For example, the Secretariat being the Southeast Regional Service Commission, which is, of course, keeping things in line, being that convener, helping everyone together, support that governance structure. But then having those partners around the table, we already had such active partners. So when we were actually brought in from the request for proposal process, and the competitive bid that went out, that was actually something all done by the council and partners. So it wasn't just a decision at the Regional Service Commission level, it was a decision from all partners. And they felt like they could have a voice in the decision of where their workforce strategy is going. So we very much so wanted to continue that partnership model. That was something that you had been doing ever since it was developed. You'd seen success in it. And this was something that we wanted to continue to build off of those strengths. We also see in different regions that this really helps with increased engagement because shared ownership, it makes you feel like you own it. So you're more likely to support and help and more likely to care if something's failing or something's going really well, rather than if it's always on someone else's list and accountability and that isn't something on that you're accountable for. It's harder to have that connection that we find, at least in these types of initiatives. So from this perspective, and we understand, I know, I'm not sure how many of you were at the State of the Province last night or listened in to Premier Holt's comments, but there was a lot of discussion around the human capital within New Brunswick and how even the percentage of youth that aren't, for example, employed, how can we continue to do these pieces? We're not going to be able to do it alone. We're not going to be able to do it centralized with only one partner. It can't just be fixed with the Regional Service Commission. It can't just be fixed within the municipalities. It can't be fixed at the PSC level. It has to be fixed with all the right partners around the table. And it's not going to happen overnight, but we're going to get there and see progress with the right partners at the table. And that's what we have. And that's what we're continuing to do to make sure that we have the right people around the table.
Thank you, Jenna. So let's look now at how this framework works in practice. So how did the skills-based analytical framework help align education and training system with the labor market needs, while also supporting worker mobility in a context of frequent job transition and evolving skills requirements?
Absolutely. No, thank you for that comment. And we were really looking at it to expand the focus beyond. We didn't want to just think about degrees and diplomas, but we wanted to also think about those upskilling, those reskilling opportunities, and making sure that, again, that was a part of the entire framework, because that's how we're going to see the progress, because it can't all be done at the college and university level. Sometimes it's little pieces, even attending a webinar like this, learning that continuous learning piece. We wanted to really look at all of these as a framework to really align and support worker mobility by emphasizing the transferable skills. So this was, again, coming back to, especially as the markets and industries adjust and slightly change over time with technology and the different pieces. If someone's displaced in their position, how can they take those transferable skills and continue along for the frequent job transitions? We know that, for example, what was needed, even if you studied computer science, say 20 years ago, versus if you study computer science today, it would look very different. So there's a need for those that have been in the industry, even myself, and I hope everyone here, we should always be having those continuous learning and supporting our skill requirements as they change. Things that they may be needed today were very different for what they needed 10 years ago. And that's always something that we need to be thinking of. We really wanted to ensure that this was a framework we looked at. We have access at Stiletto. We really focus on data. Data is one of our superpowers, and we have access to various different databases. And one of the databases that you may be aware of is Lightcast, and they actually look at job posting analytics. So that was helpful for us because we were able to see across all sectors within the region, what are the top skills that are being requested on these job postings? What are skills that aren't necessarily being requested that may have been being requested a few years ago? And we were able to look at, are they different? Are there peaks in job postings? As you can imagine, with some of the seasonal work across the region, there's some of the seasonal spikes of some of those job postings. And then what are we seeing? What are some of those across the board skills that we're seeing? Not to surprise you, language. Bilingualism is a piece that you see a lot on skills and job postings. And that's, again, across all pieces. And that's something that maybe someone didn't initially start their position as bilingual, but maybe that was something that they went and did a course through something that's come out of Working MB or Pedal. And then they were able to get another job and upskill based on their bilingual training and skill increase.
Okay, of course. Next point is that the strategy only remain useful if it can adapt over time. So why were progress tracking and continuous learning embedded in the strategy design? And how do they support evidence-based adjustment over time, in your opinion?
Absolutely. And again, I think Premier Holt said a really great comment last night about how can you know if you're doing something well if you're not tracking progress? And I think this is something very important that as a part of the strategy, we of course have developed this to be as nimble, that you can pivot, that it gives you the skills to, if something new comes up, we can adjust and we can really think outside the box. But at the end of the day, it needs to be measured. It needs to be, and then we need to be able to come back and say, okay, this is going better than we anticipated, or this isn't going as great as we anticipated. What adjustments can we make? We need to be flexible. We need to be ready for ongoing adaptation. And what we always like to say is we don't want our strategy to be printed on a shelf. That is not what even when you see this online, I hope you take some time to read it and unpack, but it's not something that I hope stays the exact same for the next 5 years. This is something that as new opportunities arise, as even of course, with everything happening with tariffs and the US versus Canada, this is something that was very new as of 12 months ago. So all these different pieces, we need to be prepared for uncertainty and adjust the strategy accordingly. Because if we're not going to make adjustments, we're not going to see the results that we really want to over time. So with continuous learning and progress tracking, this is just something that we want the partnership to be open to. Some things may not be successful. There may be a job fair or a specific initiative that we try, but for some reason, it doesn't get the results that we're looking for. And that does not mean the strategy's a fail. It means we just need to review the metrics, see what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and how can we course correct. And that's the most important thing. We can't assume that everything we're doing, I know we're experts. I know there's a lot of experts around the table, but even experts can be wrong. Even experts need that continuous learning and that opportunity to course correct. And that is something that we really very much so, we wanted to future-proof the region and future-proof the strategy. And that's something we've really been trying to work on with the council, as well as the working groups, to make sure that that's something we can give you moving forward. And of course, really see that progress you're looking for.
Thank you, Jenna. So finally, looking ahead to the implementations, to conclude, what are the key recommendations emerging from this strategy, and why it is essential that they will be implemented in an integrated way, as said on the report, to reduce this economic risk for the region?
Absolutely. Well, I think of course, just like I mentioned, we have limited time, we have limited resources, we have limited funding. There's lots of buckets of funding that lots of groups are going for. So we need to show what makes us different in a region and how we can support different investment opportunities with companies that are looking at locating here. Maybe they want to leave the United States and start Canadian headquarters, maybe from a European country, and so forth. The different FDI opportunities, making sure that we're prepared and having those pieces, and we're going to do that with focus. So we are big believers in really sticking true to the recommendations we discussed at the beginning, which is the sector focus and the skills focus. Those two things are going to really allow the partnership to be intentional, to have focus, to really see an impact, and then of course make adjustments as we come back to. So I think those two recommendations that are in the document are something I really want, that are essential, and it's going to reduce the economic risk, because we're not going to be trying to be everything to everyone. Even the largest economic centers in the world can't be everything to everyone. And the communities that really find focus and the regions that really look at what their focus is, we see them having the best success. And we want that for the Southeast region. I think another piece that is of course in our recommendations that you will see when it's all on the website is of course ensuring diversity and strong representation of participation within the council and the working groups. So as I mentioned, we're finalizing right now some clear governance and some more specifics before making changes. And there will be hopefully an opportunity for some of you on the call to participate and really help us with the implementation of this. And this is all going to come back to establishing clear governance and creating opportunities for additional partners to join as the strategy evolves. So this is something that we do see vital to make sure that we're not missing any really key voices at the table. And of course, if you're listening today and you think that there's a specific voice that you think should be at the table, feel free to reach out and we can see what we can do there. And then the last thing I just want to say on the recommendations, there are lots, so I'm sure you'll have a great time going through and some of those specific pieces that we provided some ideas. But I do think just keeping partnership and collaboration at the center of implementation. It can't become this is you and this is me and this is mine and this is yours. It really needs to continue as a regional, collaborative, partnered effort where everyone has their accountability and ownership. And I know the council is already doing this, and I know the team's already doing this. So looking forward to seeing the continued great work in that area.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for walking us through both the strategic and the analytical foundation of this work. Thank you, everyone, also who joined us today. We hope this discussion helped clarify a little bit, not only what the strategy purposes are, but also how it can be used to support coordinated and practical action across the region. So now we will turn things around or over. We have time for a question from the audience. Thank you. Anyone has any question?
Everyone must be just so excited to go implement the strategy and support the workforce of the region. That's what I'm taking from the question.
And read the report, like the report for that will be available soon on our website. But yeah, so if there is no further
I believe
question,
Dawn has her hand
Okay.
up.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you so much for this. I'm really looking forward to
Hi,
seeing the
Dawn.
whole strategy come out. Can you talk a little bit about how you separated the digital skills from the human-centered skills? Because increasingly, I see them as being like very hard to separate. It's something I'm wrestling with in
Absolutely.
the work that I do.
No, absolutely. And that's a really great point, Dawn. And when we really looked at this, I definitely think you need to think of human-centered skills. There always has to be an aspect of digital to a component. I think what we were thinking is more, especially some of the organizations that are more specifically targeting the digital skills versus the programs that are targeting more of the softer skills with the problem solving communication, that we were seeing an opportunity to leverage partners with some of the existing frameworks that they're already doing and webinar structure that they're doing. But I do think, for example, all of those skills, it's hard, even as you think about human-centered skills and you think of the language and intercultural, you could also combine those. So I think the biggest thing that we wanted to frame there is whether it be a program, maybe John, maybe you have a program that comes out that touches all three of those skills. I think that's a win. We just want to make sure that when we're thinking especially of skill-based training and programs, that we're checking the boxes and we're making sure that we have, when we were chatting with people seeking employment and when we were chatting with employers of the gaps they were experiencing in the people that they were hiring, these three things were coming up time and time again. So we wanted to demonstrate that. But to Dawn, your point, some programs may hit two of the three, some programs may hit one of the three, and some programs may hit 3 for 3. And I think more and more frequently, to your point, we're going to see them integrated, because that is what's been happening even with AI. How can you think of problem solving and creativity without AI when people are using it for creativity and problem solving? So it is a very great point, and I definitely hear you. And I think I'm not sure if that helps you to show that I don't think it's not necessarily they're siloed and they need to be one or the other, as much as those are the three key groupings that we heard. And we didn't just want to say human-centered skills, because some people still don't understand the importance of digital skills, and we're still pushing that agenda through. So we wanted that to come through in its own independent piece and show the importance of it.
Thank you. Look forward to reading the whole report.
Awesome.
Thank you then. See if anyone has any other question. Okay, so if there are no further questions, so the full strategy report I'm seeing here, Patrick mentioned, it will be available, confirmed, on our website next week. And also recording of today's webinar will be also posted on our YouTube channel, so you can revisit or share it with your team. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great day. Bye. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.